Hello, my dear student. Today, we are embarking on a journey to explore the art of speaking fluently. Whether you want to sound more confident, engage better with others, or simply enjoy the experience of clear, unhesitant conversation, mastering fluency is a powerful tool. Fluency in speaking is not just about having a rich vocabulary or knowing advanced grammar. It's about the ability to express your thoughts smoothly and effectively without frequent pauses or hesitations. It's like a dance where your words flow naturally, your confidence shines through, and your audience remains engaged. What is fluency? Fluency in speech means that you can speak without unnecessary interruptions, fillers like or struggling to find the right words. It also means speaking at an appropriate speed, maintaining clear pronunciation, and expressing your thoughts clearly and coherently. Fluency involves listening and responding quickly and effectively in conversations, whether in casual talks or formal settings. To achieve fluency, we must focus on several key areas: practice and consistency. Just like any other skill, the more you practice speaking, the better you become. Speak as often as you can, whether alone, with friends, or in front of a mirror. Over time, the repetition builds your confidence and your ability to think on your feet. Think in the language. When learning or improving your fluency in a language, practice thinking directly in that language rather than translating from your native tongue. This minimizes delays in speech, helping you respond faster and more naturally. Expand vocabulary. Through context. Learn new words, not just by memorizing, but by using them in context. When you understand how words fit into sentences, your brain becomes faster at retrieving them during conversations. Listen and imitate. Listening to fluent speakers, podcasts, or shows in your target language can help immensely. Pay attention to the flow of words, intonation, and how speakers handle complex ideas. Imitate them in your own speech. Stay relaxed and patient. Fluency doesn't come overnight. It requires patience and persistence. Stay relaxed in conversations, even if you make mistakes. Confidence comes from experience, and over time, you'll become more comfortable with speaking smoothly. Now let's dive into the story of two familiar faces, Alex and Sarah. Through their experiences, we'll learn practical tips and methods for becoming a more fluent speaker. Story: Alex and Sarah's fluency journey. Hello, Sarah. Are you ready for today's speaking practice? Alex asked, his voice smooth and confident. They were sitting in their favorite park, where they had often spent afternoons discussing ideas and sharing experiences. Not sure, Sarah responded, laughing nervously. You know how I get stuck sometimes, right? Alex smiled. Trust me, I used to be the same. Remember when I could barely string a sentence together without saying or every few seconds? Sarah nodded, recalling the early days of their friendship. Back then, Alex had struggled to express his thoughts clearly. He would pause awkwardly, searching for words, and often felt embarrassed. But something had changed in Alex over the years. Now he spoke effortlessly, his sentences flowing like a well-rehearsed melody. What's your secret? Sarah asked, leaning in curiously. Alex took a deep breath. Honestly, it all started when I stopped being afraid of making mistakes. That was the biggest thing. But let me share a few tips that really worked for me. Tip 1. Thinking in the language. When I was trying to get better at speaking fluently, Alex began, I realized that part of the problem was that I kept translating everything in my head. I'd think in one language, translate it into another, and by the time I had a response, the conversation had already moved on. Sarah laughed. I do that all the time. I end up overthinking and then I say something completely different from what I originally meant. Exactly, Alex said. So I started practicing thinking in the language I wanted to speak fluently. Whenever I had free time, I'd describe the things around me in my head. I'd talk to myself, narrating my thoughts or actions in the language. It felt weird at first, but over time, it really helped me respond faster in conversations. Sarah's face lit up. That sounds doable. I think I'll try it. Tip 2. Speaking without fear. Alex noticed Sarah's growing interest, so he continued. The second thing I learned was to let go of the fear of making mistakes. You know, at first I was so worried about being judged. What if I said something wrong? What if people laughed? Sarah nodded empathetically. I feel that too. Sometimes I just stay quiet because I'm scared of sounding silly. Exactly, Alex exclaimed. But once I started speaking more, I realized that people don't care as much as we think they do. They're not waiting to catch every mistake. In fact, they appreciate when someone is trying to communicate. And the more I spoke, the fewer mistakes I made. Sarah smiled. So, it's like, the more you speak, the more confident you get? Exactly, Alex agreed. It's all about getting used to the rhythm of speaking. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Tip 3. Imitating fluent speakers. You know how we sometimes binge-watch shows together? Alex asked. Yeah, you mean like those mystery series we love? Sarah said, laughing. Exactly. That's actually how I started improving my fluency, Alex explained. I'd listen to the characters, pay attention to how they spoke, and then I'd try to imitate their style of speaking. Not just the words, but their intonation, the way they expressed themselves. I'd even pause the show and repeat what they said. It really helped me learn how to flow naturally. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's such an interesting method. So you're saying I should mimic my favorite characters? Exactly, Alex affirmed. It's fun too, and it gets your brain used to hearing and producing fluent sentences. Tip 4. Vocabulary and context. Another thing that helped me a lot, Alex continued, was learning vocabulary through context. I used to try to memorize a long list of words, but when it came time to use them, I'd draw a blank. Sarah sighed. I can relate. I've tried that too. It's like the words disappear when I need them. Exactly, Alex said. So instead of just memorizing, I started learning words by reading them in context. I'd pick up books, listen to podcasts, and pay attention to how certain words were used. That way, when I needed those words in a conversation, I could remember the situations in which they were used, and it became easier to pull them out. Tip 5. Relax and take your time. Sarah was taking it all in, and Alex could see her feeling more confident already. "One last tip," Alex said with a smile, "is to relax. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. The more you stress about it, the harder it gets. When you're relaxed, your brain works better. And even if you make mistakes, it's okay. Just keep going. Conversations aren't about being perfect. They're about connecting with others." Sarah leaned back and took a deep breath. "I've been too hard on myself, haven't I?" "Maybe a little," Alex said kindly. "But now you know. Fluency is about progress, not perfection. Just keep practicing and you'll get there." Alex and Sarah continued meeting regularly to practice their speaking skills. Their conversations became more vibrant as Sarah applied the tips Alex had shared with her, and slowly but surely, she felt more comfortable speaking without hesitation. But there was one challenge Sarah still faced: speaking fluently in front of a larger audience. One day, as they sat in their usual spot at the park, Sarah hesitated before speaking. "Alex, I've been doing great when it's just you and me, or even with small groups of friends, but I freeze up when I have to talk in front of a crowd." Alex looked at her thoughtfully. "That's completely normal, Sarah. Public speaking is a different kind of challenge, but the principles are the same. I used to feel that way too." Sarah's eyes widened. "You? But you always seem so calm when you speak in front of people." Alex chuckled. "Trust me, I wasn't always like this. Let me tell you about the time I had to give a presentation in front of my entire class." Flashback. Alex's public speaking struggle. A few years ago, Alex found himself standing in front of his class, palms sweaty, heart racing, and words stuck somewhere in his throat. He had spent hours preparing for his presentation, but the moment he saw everyone staring at him, his mind went blank. He stammered through the first few sentences, his voice shaky and barely audible. Every time he paused, he felt the weight of the silence in the room, and it only made him more nervous. He ended up rushing through the rest of his presentation, skipping important points just to get it over with. Afterward, he was disappointed with himself. He had worked so hard, but his nerves got the better of him. That's when he realized that speaking fluently wasn't just about knowing what to say. It was about managing his nerves too. Tip 6. Breathing and pacing. "That was a tough experience," Alex admitted to Sarah, "but it taught me something important: how to control my breathing and pace myself." Sarah looked intrigued. "Breathing? That helps with fluency?" "Absolutely," Alex nodded. "When we're nervous, we tend to either speak too fast or too slow. Our breathing gets shallow, and we start losing control of our words. But if you take a deep breath before you speak, and make sure to pause every now and then, you'll find it easier to maintain your flow." "How do you know when to pause?" Sarah asked. "I practiced speaking in front of a mirror," Alex explained. "I'd time myself and practice talking slowly, making sure to pause after every few sentences. Pausing gives you a moment to gather your thoughts, and it helps your audience absorb what you're saying." Tip 7. Visualizing success. "Another thing that helped," Alex added, "was visualizing myself speaking confidently. Before I gave a presentation, I'd close my eyes and imagine everything going well. I'd picture myself standing tall, speaking clearly, and seeing the audience nodding along. Sarah gave a half smile. That sounds like something out of a self-help book. It kind of is, Alex laughed. But it really works. When you visualize success, it helps calm your nerves. You start to believe that you can actually do it. And once you believe it, you'll feel more relaxed and in control. Tip 8. Engaging with the audience. As Alex continued sharing his tips, he saw the excitement growing in Sarah's eyes. The last tip for speaking fluently in front of a crowd, he said, is to engage with your audience. Don't just focus on what you're saying. Pay attention to how they're reacting. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Won't that make me more nervous? Not at all, Alex reassured her. Think of it as a conversation, even if you're the only one talking. When you see people nodding, smiling, or reacting to what you're saying, it boosts your confidence. And if you feel connected to the audience, your nerves will settle down, and your words will flow more naturally. Sarah sighed in relief. I always thought I had to block out the audience so I wouldn't get nervous, but maybe engaging with them is the key. Exactly, Alex said. The audience is on your side. They want you to succeed, so interact with them, make eye contact, and let their energy fuel your confidence. Putting the tips to the test. A few weeks later, Sarah had her chance to put everything Alex taught her into practice. She had signed up to give a short speech at a community event, and though the thought of speaking in front of a large crowd still made her nervous, she was determined to face her fear. The day of the event arrived, and as Sarah stood backstage, she remembered Alex's tips. She took a deep breath, visualized herself speaking confidently, and reminded herself that the audience was there to listen and support her. As she walked up to the stage, her heart pounded, but she kept her focus. She began her speech, speaking slowly and clearly, and pausing when needed. She made eye contact with a few people in the front row, and to her surprise, they smiled and nodded encouragingly. With every sentence, Sarah felt her nerves melting away. Her words flowed effortlessly, and she found herself actually enjoying the experience. When she finished, the audience erupted into applause, and Sarah's heart swelled with pride. Backstage, Alex was waiting for her with a big grin. You were amazing, Sarah. How do you feel? Sarah beamed. Honestly, I didn't think I could do it, but once I started, everything just fell into place. Alex nodded. That's the power of fluency. It's not about being perfect. It's about being confident and staying in the moment. Epilogue. The journey continues. From that day forward, Sarah never looked back. Her fluency improved in leaps and bounds, not just in everyday conversations, but also in more formal settings. She became more confident in her ability to express herself, whether in front of friends or strangers. She and Alex continued their speaking practice, always finding new ways to challenge each other and grow. And every time Sarah felt a little unsure or hesitant, she remembered Alex's words. Fluency is about progress, not perfection. Their journey was far from over, but Sarah knew that with each step, she was becoming the fluent, confident speaker she had always dreamed of being. and with Alex's support, she realized that she was capable of much more than she had ever imagined. After Sarah's triumphant experience at the community event, she felt more confident than ever. But Alex, being the supportive friend he was, knew that there were still more layers to fluency she could explore. Fluency was not just about public speaking or casual conversation. It extended to storytelling, debates, and even emotionally charged situations. A few weeks later, Alex called Sarah with a new idea. "Hey Sarah, do you want to join me for a debate practice this weekend?" Sarah hesitated. "Debate? I don't know, Alex. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Public speaking was hard enough, and now you want me to argue with people?" Alex chuckled. "It's not about arguing. It's about presenting your ideas clearly and confidently. It's a whole new way of sharpening your fluency skills. Trust me, it'll be fun." Sarah sighed. "I suppose it's worth a try, but you better promise me this won't turn into some heated battle." "Promise," Alex said, grinning on the other end of the phone. "We'll keep it friendly." Tip 9. Mastering the Art of Debates. That weekend, Sarah and Alex met up at their usual spot, but instead of their typical relaxed conversation, they set up for a mock debate. Alex had printed out two opposing views on a topic they both found interesting: whether technology was improving or damaging human communication. "Here's how it works," Alex explained. "You'll take one side, I'll take the other. The goal is to present your argument fluently, listen to the other person's points, and respond without getting stuck. It's all about staying calm, thinking quickly, and speaking clearly." Sarah picked up her notes and started reading through them. She already felt her nerves kicking in. "What if I lose track of my thoughts?" Alex smiled. "That's part of the challenge. But remember the tips. Breathe, pace yourself, and if you need a moment to think, take a quick pause. It's not about rushing. It's about delivering your thoughts smoothly." As they started the debate, Sarah took the side arguing that technology had improved communication. She started off a bit tentatively, but as she remembered Alex's advice, her confidence grew. She spoke slowly and clearly, making her points about how social media and instant messaging allowed people to stay connected across the globe. Alex listened carefully, then responded from the opposing view, talking about how face-to-face communication had diminished and how people were becoming more isolated despite the digital connection. When it was Sarah's turn to respond, she found herself thinking quickly, forming counterpoints, and speaking more fluidly than she had expected. The back and forth of the debate kept her engaged, and as she spoke, she realized she was no longer second-guessing herself. By the end of the mock debate, Sarah was smiling. "Okay, I have to admit, that was kind of fun. I didn't think I'd be able to think on my feet like that." Alex nodded approvingly. Debating is a great way to improve fluency because it forces you to articulate your ideas clearly, even under pressure. Plus, it sharpens your ability to listen and respond without hesitation. You did great. Tip 10. Speaking in emotionally charged situations. As they walked through the park after their debate, Sarah thought of another situation where fluency was difficult, when emotions were involved. "You know, Alex, it's one thing to be fluent in a debate or a speech, But what about when emotions get in the way? Like when you're angry or upset? I always seem to lose control of my words when I'm emotional. Alex considered this for a moment. That's a really good point. Emotional conversations can definitely throw off your fluency. It's hard to think clearly when you're upset or frustrated, but it's not impossible. So, how do you stay fluent when you're emotional? Sarah asked. Well, Alex said, the key is learning to control your emotions before they control you. When I'm upset, I try to take a step back and breathe before I speak. It's like giving myself a moment to process the situation before I say something I might regret. Sarah nodded. That makes sense. I guess when I get emotional, I tend to react without thinking, and my words come out all jumbled. Exactly, Alex agreed. So if you can manage to stay calm and give yourself a few seconds to think, your fluency won't suffer. Also, it helps to use I statements instead of you statements in emotional conversations. It keeps the conversation less confrontational and gives you more control over what you're saying. Putting the emotional tip into practice. Not long after that conversation, Sarah had the chance to put Alex's advice into practice. She had been in a bit of a disagreement with one of her close friends, Emma. They had been talking less, and Sarah wasn't sure why. When she finally decided to talk to Emma about it, she felt nervous. She knew the conversation could get emotional, but she wanted to stay calm and express her feelings clearly. Remembering Alex's tip, Sarah took a deep breath before starting the conversation. Instead of accusing Emma of ignoring her, she began with an I statement. I've been feeling a little distant lately, and I wanted to talk about what's going on. Emma, taken aback by Sarah's calm approach, opened up more easily. They ended up having a heart-to-heart conversation, and Sarah was able to express her feelings fluently without letting her emotions overwhelm her. Afterward, Sarah realized how much progress she had made, not just in fluency, but in communication as a whole. She had learned to manage her emotions, think on her feet, and speak with clarity, whether in everyday conversations, public speaking, or more personal, emotionally charged situations. The twist: a job opportunity abroad. One evening, while Sarah and Alex were catching up over coffee, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new email notification. She glanced at it, expecting the usual flood of work emails, but her eyes widened when she saw the subject line, Exciting Opportunity in International Communications. Alex, look at this, she exclaimed, holding out her phone. It's from a company I applied to a while back. I almost forgot about it. They're offering me a job in their international division based in Paris. Alex leaned in to read the email. Whoa, Sarah, that's huge. Congratulations. But as the excitement settled in, Sarah felt a wave of uncertainty. Thanks, but international communications? My French is okay, but speaking fluently in a foreign language? That's a whole new challenge. Alex saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. It's not like you're starting from scratch. You've already mastered fluency in English, and you've come a long way. This is just the next step. Sarah bit her lip. Yeah, but what if I freeze up? It's one thing to be fluent in your native language, but what if I can't express myself as easily in French? What if I embarrass myself in meetings or social settings? Alex smiled reassuringly. Fluency in a second language is just like learning fluency in any conversation. You've got the foundation, Sarah. You just need to apply the same principles. New challenge: navigating a foreign language. Sarah's excitement about the opportunity quickly turned into a mix of nerves and anticipation. After accepting the job, she had just 3 weeks before she had to pack up her life and move to Paris. She began brushing up on her French, but the thought of speaking fluently in a professional setting filled her with anxiety. One evening, as she sat in her apartment surrounded by French textbooks and language apps, she called Alex in a mild panic. "Alex, I'm struggling. I can get by in everyday French, but when I try to talk about work or anything complex, I stumble. I'm worried I'll make a fool of myself." Alex listened patiently. "I understand it's intimidating, but remember what we talked about. Fluency is about confidence, not perfection. You don't have to be flawless in French to communicate well. You just need to focus on being clear and confident, just like you did in English." Sarah sighed. Easier said than done. "Let's take it step by step," Alex suggested. "Why don't we start practicing together? I can help with basic conversation in French, and you can ease into it. You'll find that the fluency skills you've learned in English translate more than you think." Tip 11. Fluency in a second language. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Alex met regularly, but this time their conversations switched to French. At first, Sarah struggled, especially when trying to find the right words for professional jargon. But Alex reminded her of the techniques they had used before: pausing when needed, taking deep breaths, and staying calm. They also practiced specific scenarios Sarah might face in Paris: meeting colleagues, presenting ideas in meetings, and even making small talk at social events. With each practice session, Sarah's confidence grew, and though she still stumbled over words sometimes, she found herself able to express her thoughts more clearly. One day, after a particularly good practice conversation, Sarah looked at Alex with a mix of relief and excitement. "You know, I never thought I could apply what I've learned in English fluency to a second language, but I can feel it working. I'm still nervous, but I feel more prepared." Alex grinned. "That's because the principles are universal. Whether you're speaking in English, French, or any other language, fluency comes from clarity, confidence, and connection." The move to Paris, new beginnings. The day finally arrived for Sarah to move to Paris. As she stood in the airport, waiting to board her flight, she felt a mixture of excitement and nerves bubbling inside her. She had practiced endlessly with Alex, but now it was time to put everything into action. Arriving in Paris was a whirlwind of new experiences. Sarah was thrust into meetings with her new colleagues, social events with people from all over the world, and everyday interactions in French. At first, she felt overwhelmed. There were moments where she stumbled over her words, where she felt unsure of herself, but each time she reminded herself of Alex's advice. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Sarah found herself in a cafe near the Seine, reflecting on her journey. She had just given her first presentation in French earlier that day, and while it wasn't perfect, she had gotten through it smoothly. Her colleagues had nodded along, asked questions, and she had responded confidently. As she sipped her coffee, she realized that her fluency in French, while still evolving, had already come so far in just a few short weeks. She was learning not to fear mistakes, but to embrace them as part of the journey. Tip 12. Embracing mistakes and growth. One thing Sarah quickly learned in her time in Paris was that mistakes were inevitable. There were moments when she used the wrong word or misunderstood a question, but instead of feeling embarrassed, she laughed it off and corrected herself. Her colleagues and new friends appreciated her effort and were always encouraging. Alex had been right all along. Fluency wasn't about perfection. It was about communication, connection, and confidence. The more Sarah allowed herself to make mistakes, the more comfortable she became. And the more comfortable she became, the more fluent her French grew. One day, during a video call with Alex, Sarah shared this realization. "You know," she said with a smile, "I used to think making mistakes would ruin my fluency. But now I realize it's the mistakes that are helping me grow. Every time I stumble, I learn something new. I'm not perfect, but I'm definitely more fluent than I was when I first arrived." Alex smiled proudly. "That's exactly it, Sarah. Fluency is about progress, not perfection. Whether in your native language or a new one, the key is to keep pushing forward, keep learning, and stay confident." A new twist. Alex's opportunity. Just when Sarah had settled into her new life in Paris, a twist came into Alex's life as well. During one of their video calls, Alex shared some surprising news. "Sarah, guess what? I've been offered a job opportunity in Tokyo. It's a huge step for my career, but it's in a completely different language and culture." Sarah's eyes widened in excitement. "Alex, that's incredible. But are you nervous about the language barrier?" Alex chuckled. "Absolutely. I don't speak much Japanese, and the thought of having to navigate life and work there is a bit daunting. But you've shown me that it's possible. If you can become fluent in French, I can handle Japanese." Sarah grinned. "Looks like we'll both be on this language journey together. Just remember what you always told me. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about connection. You've got this." A few months later, both Sarah and Alex were living in their new cities, embracing the challenges and adventures that came with adjusting to life in a different culture and language. They kept in touch regularly, their video calls now filled with stories of cross-cultural mishaps, linguistic triumphs, and the occasional moment of homesickness. The Tokyo challenge for Alex. The move to Tokyo was even more intense than he had imagined. Unlike Sarah's experience in Paris, where her basic knowledge of French helped her get by, Alex found himself in a city where he barely knew the language at all. Japanese was vastly different from anything he had studied before, and every interaction felt like a test of his fluency, not just in language, but in adapting to a culture that was so different from his own. During one particularly challenging week, Alex had a business meeting with a major client. While he had learned the basics of polite greetings and introductions in Japanese, the complexity of the conversation quickly left him feeling overwhelmed. The client spoke rapidly, using words Alex didn't understand, and he found himself relying on a translator more than he had hoped. After the meeting, Alex called Sarah, feeling frustrated. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, Sarah. I can barely keep up in meetings, and I'm constantly worried I'll say the wrong thing or misunderstand something important. It's like I'm starting from square one all over again." Sarah listened sympathetically. "I get it, Alex. It sounds exhausting, but remember, you've been here before. Think back to how you helped me when I was nervous about public speaking or debating. The same principles apply. You're not going to be perfect at first, and that's okay. The important thing is that you keep trying and don't give up." Alex sighed, but Sarah's words gave him some comfort. "You're right. It's just, this is a lot harder than I expected." Sarah smiled through the screen. "Of course it is, but you're Alex. You love a challenge. And besides, you're already doing great by putting yourself out there. Just think of it like fluency training. You're building the foundation, and soon enough, you'll get more comfortable." Tip 13. Navigating complex conversations in a foreign language. In the weeks that followed, Alex took Sarah's advice to heart. He realized that fluency, especially in a foreign language, wasn't about getting everything right from the start. It was about learning from mistakes and pushing through the discomfort. He started taking Japanese lessons more seriously, practicing not just vocabulary and grammar, but also learning how to handle real-life conversations.